she whispered, and collapsed. The cold wind howled across the dead land. Commander Rail sat alone in his dark metal cabin. The sky outside was red and full of dust. The world had died long ago. He didn't care anymore. War had taken everything, his family, his friends, even his soul. Now he just waited. For what? He didn't know. Suddenly a sound. Knock, knock, knock. Rail froze. No one ever came here. Not since the war ended. Not since the world ended. He grabbed his old plasma rifle and walked slowly to the door. Another knock, weak, slow. He opened the door. There she stood. A woman. Barefoot. Thin. Dirty. Her clothes were torn. Her lips were cracked. She held something in her arms. Wrapped in cloth. Her eyes met his. They were full of pain. And fear. She stepped forward, just a little. Her voice was so soft. Almost a whisper. "I'll warm your bed. Please. Just feed my child." Rail didn't speak. Before he could move, the woman collapsed. Right into his arms. The cloth bundle rolled slightly. A small hand slipped out. A child. Rail caught the woman before she hit the ground. She was burning with fever, breathing fast. Her body was shaking. She hadn't eaten in days, maybe weeks. He looked down at the child. It didn't cry. It didn't move. It just stared at him with glowing blue eyes. Rail dragged them both inside. He placed the woman on a small bed. The child sat beside her silently. He boiled water, searched his supplies, found a few nutrient packs, and crushed some herbs. He placed a wet cloth on her forehead. "Who are you?" he asked softly. No answer. The child kept staring at him. Rail was a soldier, not a doctor. But he tried. He had to. Night fell. The red sky turned black. The stars were broken. Half the orbiting satellites had fallen long ago. Rail sat beside the bed. The woman was still unconscious. The child had not made a single sound. He leaned closer. The child looked human. But something was wrong. Rail scanned the child with a handheld device. The screen blinked, beeped, then showed a message. Warning. Unknown DNA signature detected. Rail frowned. "What are you?" he whispered. The child blinked once, and then a voice echoed in Rail's head. But the child had not spoken. The voice was soft, strange, not human. Protect the child, or lose everything. Rail stood up quickly. His heart beat fast. He looked around. Was someone there? No. Just him, the woman, and the child. He stared at the child again. The glowing eyes never left him. Hours passed. The wind outside grew stronger. Rail sat near the door with his rifle. He couldn't sleep. Memories returned of war, of bombs, of screams, of fire. He remembered his daughter. She had eyes like this child. Bright, full of life. Before the war took her away. His fists clenched. He didn't know who this woman was. He didn't know what this child was. But something deep inside him whispered, "They need you." He looked at the child again. "I'm not a hero," he said. But the child simply stared, calm, almost like it understood. Suddenly, the woman coughed. Rail rushed to her side. She opened her eyes slowly. Where am I?" "You're safe," Rail said. She looked at the child. "Is he okay?" Rail nodded. "He hasn't spoken. What's his name?" The woman took a deep breath. "I call him Soul. He's not mine. Not fully." Rail's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" But the woman closed her eyes again. "Please, just protect him. They'll come for him." Rail leaned in. Who's coming?" But she didn't answer. She was too weak. He looked back at the child. Soul. The name felt strange on his tongue. Outside, far in the sky, something moved. A small light blinked in the clouds. A drone. Watching. Rail stood by the small window watching the sky. The blinking drone light was gone now. Hidden behind clouds, or maybe gone for good. But his instincts told him otherwise. Something had found them. He looked back at the child. Soul was still sitting beside the sleeping woman. Still silent. Still watching. No normal child stayed this quiet. No child had glowing eyes. Rail walked closer. "Who are you really?" he whispered. He knelt down and gently unwrapped more of the cloth around Soul. The child didn't move, but something fell out of the bundle. A small black device, cold, smooth, with blinking green lights. Rael picked it up carefully. It was military tech, very advanced. Something he hadn't seen since his days in the deep labs during the war. He turned it over. On the back there was a marking, Genesis Protocol, classified. Rael's heart skipped a beat. He had heard that name before. Genesis Protocol was a secret project. Something dark, something powerful, something not meant to survive the war. He looked at Soul again. The child's blue eyes shimmered, almost softly. "You're from there, aren't you?" Rael said, voice tight. Later that night, the woman finally woke up again. She was weak but alert. Rael offered her some warm liquid. She took it slowly. "Your name?" he asked. She hesitated, then spoke. "Lyra. Where are you from?" "Nowhere. We've been running for weeks. Hiding. Starving." Rael leaned forward. "You said the child isn't yours." Lyra looked at Soul. Her eyes softened. "I found him. I was a nurse in a hidden facility. They were experimenting, mixing human DNA with alien cells, trying to build something that could survive any world, any war." Rael's hands clenched. "Genesis Protocol." She looked up, surprised. "You know it?" Rael nodded slowly. "I was there. At the start." Lyra's voice cracked. "They created dozens, maybe hundreds of children. Most died. Some went mad. Only one survived without defect." Rael stared at Soul. "Him?" Lyra nodded. "They called him Specimen 9. I called him Soul, because he gave me light when everything else was dark." Rael's chest felt tight. Memories of his past clawed at his mind. He had walked away from Genesis. He thought it had been destroyed, buried. But now it was here, in his home, staring at him with blue glowing eyes. Suddenly the child moved. Not much, just raised a hand and pointed. Rael turned to look. The door console was blinking red. A signal. Incoming. He rushed to the panel. "Read the scan." "Unmarked drone. Scanning perimeter. Armed." Rael grabbed his rifle. "They found you," he said. Lyra stood slowly, shaking. "You have to run. You have to take him. I'll stay and buy you time." Rael shook his head. "I don't leave people behind. Not anymore." The drone was still far, but not far enough. Rael opened a hatch in the floor. "Come. Downstairs." He led them into the old underground bunker used during the war. Cold, dark, dusty. He sealed the hatch behind them. They sat in silence. Soul sat calmly, as if none of this was strange to him. Rael turned to Lyra. "What do they want with him now?" Lyra spoke with pain. "They want control. Soul isn't just smart, he's something more. He learns fast. He changes fast. They think he's the key to the next evolution." Rael stared. "Next evolution?" "He can survive without food. He can heal quickly. He can speak into minds." Rael nodded. "He did that to me. A voice. It told me to protect him." Lyra's eyes widened. "He trusts you. That's rare." Rael looked at Soul. The child raised his hand again, and the room lights flickered on. But no one touched the switch. Rael stood still. He had seen strange tech. He had seen bioweapons. But this child was something else. Something new. Something dangerous. Hours passed. The drone never entered. Maybe it left. Maybe it waited. Rael couldn't be sure. But one thing was now clear. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about truth. Rael took out an old map. "There's a safe zone," he said. "Up in the mountain ruins. A place where no scanners work. A place I helped build during the rebellion." Lyra looked up. "Can we get there?" Rael stared at Soul. "We have to." Outside, far in the distance, another light blinked in the sky. More were coming. But Rael had made a choice. He would protect this child, even if the world burned again. Rael didn't sleep that night. He sat near the metal door, watching the motion scanner flash. Every few minutes it blinked yellow, movement detected, but the screen never showed a full image. The drones were circling, waiting, hunting. He checked his old rifle, loaded the last energy cell. Just 3 shots left. He hoped it would be enough. Behind him, Lyra and Sol were asleep. The bunker was cold, but the child didn't seem to feel it. He slept without a blanket, arms tucked close to his chest, like a machine in rest mode. Rael had seen machines like that before during the war, but Sol was still something else, something alive, something beyond. As dawn broke, just a faint orange light through the dusty sky, Lyra woke up coughing. Rael brought her water. "We can't stay here," she said, her voice hoarse. Rael nodded. "We leave tonight, once it's dark again." Lyra looked at Sol, still sleeping. Her hand touched the edge of the blanket. Her fingers trembled. Rael sat down across from her. "You said you were a nurse," he said, "but not in a normal place." Lyra sighed. "It was called Sector 9 Delta, underground facility, hidden from satellites. They used old rebel tunnels to build it. Military, private, very rich, very secret. Not even part of the global command. They had scientists from 3 planets, and they were obsessed with one thing, creating a perfect survivor." Rael frowned. "What went wrong?" Lyra looked at him. Her eyes were tired. "They succeeded." Sol opened his eyes. He sat up and looked straight at Rael. No blinking, no confusion, just focus. Rael stared back. Then Sol did something new. He smiled. For the first time. But it wasn't a normal smile. It was too calm, too knowing. Rael felt a chill. "Does he understand everything we say?" he asked. Lyra nodded. "More than that. He feels it. Emotion, danger, even lies. He doesn't need words." Rael rubbed his face. "What else can he do?" Lyra hesitated. "He's still growing. They don't know his full limits. He learns fast, changes fast. One day he touched a dead bird. It flew again." Rael froze. "He brought it back?" Lyra nodded. "Only for a minute. But yes." Suddenly, boom. The bunker shook. Dust fell from the ceiling. The scanner flashed red. Rael jumped to his feet. "Surface breach, west side," he shouted. Lyra grabbed Sol. The screen showed a shape, human-sized, fast-moving, armored. Rael grabbed his rifle and climbed the ladder to the surface hatch. He peeked through the scope. A figure in black armor stood in the ash field. Helmeted, weapon in hand. Glowing red visor. One of them. Rael aimed, but the figure raised both hands slowly. No weapon drawn. Then the helmet opened. A woman's face. She looked human. Young. Sharp features. But her eyes glowed softly. Silver. She spoke through a speaker on her chest. "We do not want to kill. Only to take what belongs to us." Rael whispered. "They've made more." He shut the hatch and sealed it. Back underground, Lyra was shaking. "They sent her," she said. "That's Unit V7. I saw her once. She was built to lead retrieval missions." Rael frowned. "Built? Born then changed. She's enhanced. Like Sol, but older, trained for war." Rael paced. "She's not alone. She's just the scout." Lyra's voice cracked. "If they take Sol, they'll use him, clone him, turn him into a weapon. He'll never be free." Rael slammed his fist into the wall. Not again. He wouldn't let another child be turned into a machine. Not like the others. Night fell. Rael opened the back tunnel, a secret path that led to the outer ruins. He handed Lyra a flashlight and a cloak. "We go now. Leave the bunker behind." Lyra picked up Sol. The child looked calm, ready, as if he already knew what would happen. Rael led them through the narrow tunnel, moving fast but quiet. Above, the scanner alarm began to beep wildly. They had entered the bunker, but it was empty now. Rael smiled slightly. Let them find ghosts. After 2 hours, they reached a broken ridge. The ground ahead was cracked and steep, but beyond it, high in the mountain fog, Rael saw it. The safe zone. Still hidden. Still standing. He turned to Lyra. "We're close. Another night's travel." Then a sound. From behind. Footsteps. Multiple. Rail grabbed his scope and looked back. 3 armored figures. All silver-eyed. One of them pointed. They had found the trail. Rail cursed. No more hiding. Lyra held Soul tight. We can't outrun them. Rail looked at Soul. Can you help us? The child looked up. No fear. Just stillness. He touched the ground. And the earth shook just slightly. Behind them, the ridge began to collapse. Rocks fell. Dust flew. The hunters paused. Rail stared in shock. Soul had triggered a landslide with just a touch. Lyra gasped. He's changing again. Rail smiled, breathless. Good. Because they're not stopping. The night was quiet again, but not peaceful. Ash fell like snow. Rail, Lyra, and Soul hid inside a broken transport tank half buried in the valley. The wreck was from the old war, burned and rusted, but good enough to shield them for the night. Rail sat outside watching the stars, or what was left of them. His eyes didn't blink. His hands held the rifle close. His mind was trapped in memories. Soul was asleep inside the tank. Lyra lay beside him, coughing softly. The war had taken everything from them. But Rail had a secret. Something no one, not even Lyra, knew. Years ago, Rail was one of the first soldiers chosen for a project so secret, it didn't even have a name at first. Just a number. Project 47X. It began as a defense experiment. Use alien DNA to build better soldiers. Faster, smarter, stronger. But things changed quickly. Soon, they weren't building soldiers. They were building children. The first time Rail saw the lab, he thought he was in a dream. Rows of glass tubes. Each tube held a child. Eyes closed, floating in blue liquid. Machines monitored their hearts. Artificial wombs grew them like crops. He had asked the lead scientist, Dr. Varn, why children? Dr. Varn had smiled coldly. Because adults are broken. But children can be rewritten. Rail had felt sick. But he stayed. He trained the security teams, kept the place hidden, told himself it was for peace, for survival. Then came Specimen 9, Soul. He wasn't born. He wasn't made. He was found. One day, during a patrol near an old alien crash site, soldiers discovered a strange egg-shaped pod. Inside was a baby, alive, breathing, glowing faintly. The lab took him in, studied him, mixed his DNA with theirs, tried to understand him. But he didn't die like the others. He didn't go mad. He adapted. He watched. He learned. He mimicked voices, tools, emotions. Rail remembered watching the child touch a glass wall. The glass had cracked, not from strength but from vibration. The child had matched its frequency, just by listening. Rail had known then, he's not just human. He's not just alien. He's something else. Something that could replace them all. One night, Rail had broken the rules. He had entered the child's chamber. Alone. Soul had stared at him. Silent. Just a baby. Rail had said, "Do you understand me?" And a moment later, inside his mind, the words came, "You are afraid. I can feel it." Rail had stepped back, terrified. But Soul had not moved. Just stared. Back in the present, Rail wiped his face. That child was now sleeping just meters away. And the ones who created him, they were coming to take him back. Rail whispered to the sky, "I should have stopped them back then." Behind him, Lyra's voice broke the silence. Weak, but steady. "You were part of it, weren't you?" Rail didn't turn. "Yes." Lyra stood at the tank's doorway. She looked tired, angry, sad. "You helped them. I didn't know what they were building. You knew enough to run." Rail looked at her. "Yes, and now I'm trying to fix it." She walked closer. "Can he be fixed?" Rail paused. "No, because he's not broken." Inside the tank, Soul stirred. His eyes opened. Blue light in the dark. He sat up slowly and looked outside. Then he whispered without sound. But Rail heard him. Inside his head. "They are near." Rail stood instantly, scoped the horizon, but saw nothing. Lyra whispered, "Can he sense them?" Rail nodded. He always could. Minutes later, they were on the move again, climbing toward the mountain path. The air grew colder, the sky darker. Every sound felt like footsteps. Every shadow looked like a drone. They moved fast, careful. Sol walked on his own now, quiet but alert. He would stop now and then, look around, then nod, like a guide. Rail whispered to Lyra, "He knows the way." She nodded. He always did. As they reached the cliff's edge, Rail stopped suddenly. A sharp red light blinked ahead. A sensor mine. He moved forward slowly and disabled it. Then, from behind, click, Rail froze. A voice, deep and smooth, called out, "You always were good at finding traps, Commander." Rail turned slowly. A man stood there, armor black, helmet off, face scarred, ice cold. Rail stared. "Terran," Lyra whispered. "Who is he?" Rail's voice was bitter. "An old friend." Terran smiled. "Friend? That was before you betrayed your own mission." Rail raised his rifle. "Still breathing, aren't you?" Terran shrugged. "I came for the boy. You know what he is. You know he doesn't belong to us." Rail stepped in front of Sol. "He belongs to no one." Terran raised his hand, and 6 armed soldiers appeared from the rocks. Guns ready. No mercy. Rail didn't flinch. Then, without warning, Sol stepped forward. He looked at Terran, then softly whispered, "Go back." And the soldiers stopped. One by one, they dropped their weapons. Their eyes glazed over. Lost. Frozen. Terran stepped back, confused, angry. "What did you do?" Sol looked at him. "No more killing." And then, boom, the mountain shook. A drone exploded in the sky. Lightning flashed without clouds. Sol's eyes burned brighter. Rail stared, amazed. Lyra whispered, breathless, "He's not the future. He's the end of everything we know." The mountain was no longer quiet. Smoke drifted through the cold air. Burned metal from the fallen drone still glowed faintly. The sky, once red with dust, now shimmered with strange electric clouds. Sol had changed something. Rail could feel it. He could feel everything changing now. They ran through the narrow pass. Rail led the way, rifle ready. Lyra followed, holding Sol's hand. But the child didn't seem tired. His steps were steady. His breath calm. He wasn't afraid. Rail, though, was not of the enemy, but of Sol. They reached a wide open plateau. Flat, dry land between cliffs. Beyond it, the mountains bent toward the rebel ruins. That's where they needed to go. Rail stopped and pulled out an old tracker. It still worked. A green dot blinked far ahead. The safe zone beacon. They were close. Maybe 5 miles more. But behind them, red lights began to rise. 3 drones. Then 4. Then a large, flying transport. Terran hadn't given up. And he wasn't alone anymore. "We need a distraction," Rail said. "There's nowhere to hide," Lyra answered. Rail looked at the map, then up at the cliffs. "We don't hide." He pointed to a narrow path leading up the ridge. Old mining cables still hung there, remnants of a long-dead drilling site. "We climb." Lyra hesitated. "With the child." Sol looked up. "I can climb." His voice quiet, clear. The first real words he had spoken out loud. Rail blinked. "You spoke." Sol nodded and smiled. They began the climb. The path was thin, dangerous. Rocks slipped beneath their boots. The wind howled louder the higher they got. Below them, the transport landed. Soldiers poured out. Armored, armed, trained. They had only minutes. Rail looked down, cursed under his breath, and climbed faster. Lyra slipped once. Rail caught her. But Sol didn't stumble. He was already near the top, waiting. At the top of the ridge stood a rusted comms tower, long dead, half buried in ice. Rail broke the panel open. Old wires, fried circuits, still usable. He worked fast. "If I can send a pulse, I can shut down their drones." Lyra watched the soldiers below growing closer. "Hurry." Sol touched the side of the tower. A soft hum began. Rail looked at him. "You're helping." Soul nodded. They think with machines. I think with sound. Rail didn't understand fully, but he didn't need to. He connected the wires. Soul closed his eyes. The air shimmered. Below, the soldiers raised their weapons. But the drones above them started to spark, then fall. One by one, crashing. The soldiers looked confused, then scared. The transport shook. Its engine lights blinked. Powered down. Rail stared, amazed. You just shut down their systems. Soul opened his eyes. I didn't shut them. I spoke to them. They climbed down the far side of the ridge. Faster now. No machines followed. But Rail knew it wouldn't last. The enemy still had men, weapons, rage, and Soul's power, whatever it was, wouldn't stay secret much longer. At the bottom of the slope, Rail stopped. A large metal door stood buried in the rock. He brushed off the dust. The old symbol was still there. Rebel Shelter 17. Access restricted. He placed his hand on the scanner. Nothing. Power was gone. Lyra whispered, "We're out of time." Rail pulled out a tool, tried to force the lock. But before he could, Soul stepped forward, touched the scanner, and it lit up. The door opened slowly, grinding like thunder. Rail stared. How? Soul said nothing. He just walked inside. The shelter was dark, cold, long abandoned, but it was safe. For now. Rail lit the emergency lights. Metal halls stretched deep underground. Storage rooms, barracks, labs. Rail found blankets, food packs, water tanks. He locked the outer door. They were hidden again. Later, Rail sat alone in the control room. His fingers shook slightly. Soul had shown powers Rail still couldn't explain. Not magic, not tech. Something deeper, something ancient. He looked at the security monitor. Watching Soul and Lyra sleep on the floor nearby, Rail spoke softly to himself. He's not just a child. He's a signal. A voice answered from behind him. You finally understand. Rail turned fast. No one was there, except Soul, now standing quietly in the doorway. His eyes glowed softly. Rail stood up. Was that you? Soul nodded. Rail swallowed hard. Why now? Soul stepped closer. Because you're ready to hear it. Rail frowned. Hear what? Soul looked up. I wasn't sent to be saved. I was sent to choose. Choose what? Soul blinked. Who gets to survive? Inside the hidden shelter, silence ruled. Rail sat in the control room, staring at the old rebel screens. Lines of broken data blinked slowly, like a dying heartbeat. The only real light came from the soft glow in Soul's eyes. You said you were sent to choose, Rail whispered. But by who? Soul didn't answer right away. Then, in a quiet voice that felt older than his small body, he said, by the ones who came before you, and the ones who will come after. Rail didn't understand. But he knew one thing for sure, Soul was not a normal child. Not a weapon. Not even a miracle. He was something more. Something dangerous. And yet, Rail still wanted to protect him. Even if it meant turning against the world. Lyra was resting in a storage room, her back against the wall, eyes half shut. She hadn't spoken much since the ridge. Rail joined her, bringing a blanket. You okay? She nodded. Just tired. He sat beside her. He shut down drones with a thought, he said. Opened a military door with a single touch. And now he talks in riddles. Lyra looked at him. You're scared. Rail looked away. Wouldn't you be? She gave a weak smile. He's not what we expected. But he hasn't hurt anyone. Yet, Rail said. Later that night, the outer security system beeped. Someone was approaching. Rail froze. Lyra grabbed her bag. Soul, still calm, looked at the screen. One life form. Alone. Unarmed. Rail unlocked the side entrance and stepped out. A figure stood in the shadows. Long coat. Metal arm. Worn boots. Rail's rifle rose automatically. Stop! The figure stepped into the light. Rail's eyes widened. Kara? Kara had once been his team partner during the rebellion. A fighter. A hacker. A survivor. He hadn't seen her in 7 years. He thought she was dead. "Hello, Commander," she said softly. "You look older." Rael lowered his rifle slowly. "How did you find this place?" "I was tracking the boy's signal. Thought it was bait. Then I saw you." Rael didn't speak. Kara looked around. "You always did pick good hiding spots." Then she looked him in the eyes. "Rael, you need to give him up." Inside, Lyra stood quickly. "Who is she?" Rael didn't answer. Kara entered behind him, arms raised. She spotted Sol. "So it's true," she whispered. "He really is alive." Sol tilted his head. "You don't like me." Kara's eyes widened. "You can read minds?" "No," Sol said. "Just hearts." Rael stepped between them. "He's not going anywhere." Kara frowned. "You don't understand, Rael. There's a bounty on him the size of a planet. Governments, private labs, off-world buyers. They all want him. Some for science. Some for war. Some for fear." Rael's jaw tightened. "And you? Who are you working for?" Kara didn't answer. That was enough. They locked her in a side room for the night. Rael watched her through a small screen. She sat calmly. Didn't struggle. That worried him. Later, Rael walked the halls alone. Sol followed behind, barefoot and silent. "You don't trust her," Sol said. Rael shook his head. "I've seen too many people change sides." Sol looked up. "Would you change sides for me?" Rael stopped walking. "I don't know what side you're on." Sol blinked. "I'm not on a side. I'm what happens when both sides fail." Rael didn't answer. The words felt too heavy to carry. An hour before dawn, the power cut out. All lights off. All systems dead. Then a sharp hiss gas in the vents. Rael's eyes widened. Ambush! He rushed to the locked room. Kara was gone. Lyra screamed from the hallway. Rael reached her. She was coughing, weak, struggling to stand. Sol stood beside her, calm again. "She took the backup key," Lyra gasped. "She's going to call them." Rael grabbed his rifle. Outside the shelter, Kara stood on the ridge with a beacon. She activated it. A flare of blue light shot into the sky. A signal. Rael aimed, but didn't fire. Kara turned and faced him. "You think you're saving him," she shouted. "But he's not a child, he's a choice. And someone has to make it." Rael stepped closer. "Let me guess. You think you should?" "No," she said. "He already has." She pointed at Sol. "He's not choosing who to trust. He's choosing who matters. And I don't." She smiled sadly, then dropped the beacon and vanished into the shadows. Within minutes, scanners picked up incoming ships. Fast, heavily armed. Rael turned to Lyra. "We're out of time." Lyra looked at Sol. "What do we do?" Sol's voice echoed softly. "We end it." Rael frowned. "End what?" Sol looked at the sky. "Running." Rael realized then, Sol had never been afraid. He had never been hiding. He was learning, watching them all, judging them, and now he had decided something. Something final. The sky had changed. It was no longer red with dust or black with smoke. It was white now, glowing, still, like the world itself had stopped to watch what was coming. Rael stood outside the shelter, rifle tight in his grip, eyes scanning the air. Behind him, Lyra held Sol's hand, but her fingers trembled. They had nowhere left to run. Above them, 3 large ships broke through the clouds, black, fast, silent. A triangle of death. Rael had seen ships like that during the final days of the war. Back then, they brought fire. Now, they brought something worse. Control. "We hold here," Rael said. "If they take one step on this mountain, I swear." "No," Sol interrupted. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear, calm. Rael turned. "What?" Sol stepped forward. "No more fighting. No more hiding. No more fear." Lyra whispered. "Then what? What do we do?" Sol looked at the sky. His eyes were brighter than ever. Not just glowing, they were shining. "We let them come." The first ship landed. Dust flew. Trees bent. The mountain shook. Black armored soldiers marched out. Slow, cold, perfect formation. But they didn't fire. They stopped 20 feet from Sol. Then one figure stepped forward. A woman. No helmet. No gun. Just a voice. "We've come to retrieve the child." Rael raised his weapon. "He's not going anywhere." The woman looked at him. "He doesn't belong to you." "He doesn't belong to anyone." Sol stepped forward. "Let him speak," the woman said. Sol nodded. Then silence. No words. But something passed through the air. The feeling. Even the birds stopped singing. Rael stepped back, confused. His head felt strange. Quiet but heavy. The woman closed her eyes, and tears fell down her cheeks. Then she dropped to her knees. One by one, every soldier did the same. Without a word. Rael stared. What did you do?" Sol looked at him. "I didn't hurt them. I showed them." "Showed them what?" "What it feels like to be human." The ships powered down. Engines cooled. The sky turned blue for the first time in years. Back inside the shelter, Rael sat on the floor. Tired. Not from running, but from everything. Lyra bandaged his arm quietly. She finally smiled again. "It's over, isn't it?" Rael looked at Sol, who now sat peacefully in the corner, drawing circles in the dust. "Maybe for us," Rael said, "but not for him." Later, Sol walked out to the cliff alone. Rael followed. "What happens now?" Rael asked. Sol looked out at the valley. Green had started to return. Flowers, grass, color. "This world is healing," Sol said. "But not because I fixed it." Rael frowned. "Then how?" Sol turned to him. "Because you chose to believe in something again." Rael swallowed. He wanted to say more, but couldn't. So he just stood there, shoulder to shoulder with the child who was never a child. 1 hour later, the ships left. Empty. No shots fired. No battle. Just silence. And peace. For now. Sol didn't stay. Rael and Lyra watched him walk into the forest alone. He turned once. Smiled. "I'm not the end," he said. "I'm the seed." Then he vanished between the trees. Like light fading at dawn. Years passed. Rael built a home where the shelter used to be. Others came, refugees, rebels, survivors. And slowly the world turned green again. They spoke of the boy with blue eyes who never aged. Some said he was a god. Others said he was a weapon. But Rael only smiled and said, he was the first to truly listen. And sometimes, when the wind blew just right, you could still hear a soft voice say, "Protect the child." But no one needed to anymore. He was the protector now. He was the future.